Temujin couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Traders Guild and the Empire were the closest of allies. The Traders Guild must have lost faith in the Empire's ability to protect them, and then decided to take control themselves. Sadly for them, it would play right into the Horde's hands. Once Temujin's siege camp was complete, and all the supplies needed were stowed, he would form up the Horde to attack the city. His plan would not involve any fancy maneuvers or stratagems. It would be a grind, inch by inch, house by house. Temujin's intention would be to break through the front gates and clear the city house by house. He would then use these cleared buildings as strong points to launch his next attack. This was the reason he created the first immortal Arbonne. The iron fist of the Horde could smash through any defenses and absorb any arrows fired at them. And once they had forced a bridgehead, the heavy Arbonnes could move in for support. And so it was. Temujin noticed a small cliff elevated above the gate. He ordered his light Arbonnes to take position on the cliff and cover the advance into the city. With his light Arbonnes in place, Temujin charged through the gate with his immortals. The resistance was scant, and soon after taking the gate, Temujin called in his heavy Arbonnes, and the battle began in earnest. The civil war taking place in the city allowed the Horde to secure the entrance as they went about clearing the nearby buildings. Small groups of both the Empire and Traders Guild samurai tried to block the Horde, but they were easily brushed aside. With the gate and its immediate buildings secured, Temujin ordered the light Arbonnes to take position on the various rooftops, firing down at any enemies below, while the heavy Arbonnes would mop up any stragglers and defend the positions of their light counterparts. Lastly, he ordered his eagles to take a position on top of a nearby watchtower and prevent the Traders Guild from crossing the bridge which connected their main fortress with the city of Heng. Despite the fact the initial stage of the battle was quite easy for the Khan, he noticed the fighting within the city had ceased and all sides dug in for a protracted siege that would end in one of the factions having complete control of the economic hub. The south section of the city, surrounding the main gate, was firmly in control of the Horde. Lord Yoshinaga had managed to expel the Traders Guild from her section of the city and dug in around the western portion close to her residence, leaving the sector in her complete control. Lastly, the Traders Guild defeated the Empire Samurai on their fortress island and controlled the northern section of the city, which was well protected by a narrow bridge that connected the guild with the main part of the city. A stalemate set in as the Horde took time after their initial success to secure their section, resupply their troops, and heal the wounded. The first day of the siege ended well for the Horde. While their best case scenario may not have been achieved, which was a quick and easy takeover, Temujin knew this was unlikely, and expected that the siege would be a lengthy process. During the night, he planned the next phase of the operation for the second day. With the Eagles guarding the bridge, the Traders Guild protecting their side fervently, it made sense for the Horde to direct their energies against the Empire remnants in the western portion of the city. Once defeated, he would consolidate complete control over the main portion of Heng, and in addition, he would not have to leave any forces to secure his flanks, which would allow him to use his entire army when it came time to break the Traders Guild fortress. In the morning, Temujin gathered his heavy soldiers and moved them into the western section of the city. The Horde moved through the streets, bursting into buildings and killing anyone who tried to get into their way. The initial phase was quite easy for the Horde once again. However, as they grew closer to Lord Yoshinaga's residence, the resistance became stronger and stronger until finally the Horde had reached the noble's house. The Horde knew what to expect at this point. Once they broke down the door, a massive garrison of samurai elite warriors would come charging out defending the noble. The Horde wasn't disappointed, as the moment they opened the door, the elite warriors were just waiting for their opportunity to strike. Unfortunately for these poor samurai warriors, they were vastly outnumbered by the heavy Arbons outside. So used to fighting with less troops than their opponents, the Horde made excellent use of their numerical superiority and quickly crushed the garrison. It was washed over and engulfed by the Horde. Lord Yoshinaga was defiant to the very end, demanding that Temujin kneel at her feet. Despite the fact she was clearly outnumbered, the Khan sneered at such a request. It was this type of arrogance that was causing their empire to crumble around them. Even their most stalwart allies were abandoning them at this point. The lady was a skilled fighter, but proved to be no match for the Horde, as they overwhelmed and captured her. Considering she did not die in battle, Temujin would take her back to Brink for summary execution at the first available opportunity. With the noble captured, Temujin maintained control over the entire city. Only the small island fortress of the Traders Guild held out when the sun set on the second day. Temujin did not like to attack at night, as it would diminish the effectiveness of his bowmen, so during the night, the Horde would once again resupply and regroup as Temujin prepared to remove the last resistance from the city. The massive fortress loomed across the bridge. Temujin's eagles maintained a watchful eye over the bridge, sniping any samurai they would dare move into their range. The Traders Guild did not attempt to attack over the bridge, rather opting to strengthen their already formidable defenses. When the sun rose on the third day of the siege, Temujin took his immortals and crossed over the bridge and set foot on the opposite side. A party of samurai was waiting for the Khan, which he and his soldiers would quickly dispatch. Once he gained a bridgehead, he called over the heavy Arbons and cleared the ground floor of the fortress and took control of any buildings. That was, of course, except for the fortress HQ itself. Temujin was a little concerned at this point. How could it be so easy, he thought. Still not wanting to take any chances, he took his eagles and light troops and deployed them on a roof of a building near the HQ. The HQ was atop a spire, so they could not gain height advantage. So the Horde would have to rely on coaxing as many samurai out of the fortress and into the Horde's kill zones. Temujin led the first attack wave up the ramp, trying to provoke as many samurai to attack his Horde, but only a few took the bait. Again, the Khan led the Horde up the ramp, moving deeper into the fortress, and this time he could see the defenses of the Traders Guild and what they had mustered against them. Dozens of samurai captains defended the Trade Guild leader. The captains represented the pinnacle of the Empire's strength. These elite soldiers were even more powerful than the guards used to defend the Empire's various nobles. These samurai captains were often generals leading entire armies. In this case, though, it appeared that the guild had bought as many captains as they could, and they were assembling them at their headquarters. This made sense if their plan was to overthrow the Empire, but in this case, these captains would now be fighting for their survival. The Horde quickly moved back to their kill zones, and more samurai followed this time, including the leader of the Traders Guild, trusty advisor and squire, Yamdu, came out to fight for his master. But having almost no combat training, he was cut down instantly. The battle continued throughout the day in the fashion of a swirling tug of war, as the Horde would try and lure more samurai out into the open, while the Traders Guild would try and lure more Arbons into the fortress. Eventually, though, the Horde would gain the upper hand, and Logan himself was given no choice but to give battle to the Horde. Unfortunately for him, though, he was a merchant and not a warrior. Even the Horde's newest recruits would have no problem besting him in combat. They quickly downed him, and the loss of their leader shook the Traders Guild greatly. and their resistance started to die out. Eventually, the Horde would move in and take control of the fortress. Once they removed the last guards defending the northern gate, their fortress was taken. When the sun set on the third day, the Horde was in complete control of Heng. The protracted multi-day bloodbath was the longest operation the Horde had ever embarked on up until this point, and one of the first successful sieges conducted with minimal help from the Horde's allies. The Siege of Heng showed without a doubt that the Horde was now one of the major factions on the continent, excelling in commerce, technology, but especially warfare. The fall of the Empire was now a question of when, not if. Question now would be, is there anyone capable of stopping the Horde from bringing the continent completely under its domination? There were still many powerful and competent factions on the continent, so who knows if one of them proved to be a legitimate challenger to the Horde. With Heng under control of the Khan, he would order his withdrawal from the city. He wanted to take his captured leaders back to Brink for execution before returning and taking control of the city himself. For now, the city would descend into a state of lawlessness and anarchy as the Horde filed its way back to their siege camp. Once Temujin made it back to the camp, he would not have any time to rest, as one of his scouts informed him that there was a massive Empire force coming to retake the city. Not only that, this force was led by the legendary Igor, the Empire's most capable general and their most ruthless slave hunter. He was the overall commander-in-chief of the Empire's entire army. Temujin wasted no time preparing his forces. However, they had not all completely withdrawn from Brink yet, as some of the crippled and wounded lagged behind. Temujin formed up the available soldiers at his command and led them out of the camp gates to meet Igor and his forces. Temujin took in the massive Igor for the first time. He was a Hiver soldier drone, just like the Khan. Yet he was even larger than the Great Khan. Though most interestingly to Temujin, he was a Southern Hiver. Up until this point, he had never seen a Southern Hiver work for any other faction besides their own queen. The Southern Hivers, which the Horde had captured in previous battles, had refused to ever work with them. Not one ever broke their bond with their queen, yet somehow Igor had. The massive brute didn't even say anything. He just pointed forward and his army attacked. The Horde and the Empire met for one last battle to decide who would control the city of Heng. In what would become known as the Battle of the Sandy Plains, the two forces clashed on the desert plains outside the city. At first, Igor's forces were doing very well, but as more and more Horde warriors streamed out of the city and reinforced their comrades, the tide began to shift. And before Igor knew it, he was alone, standing among a mass of Horde soldiers. The Hiver let out a great war cry as he began to fight to the bitter end, and in the process, cutting down many of the Khan's best soldiers. However, even the massive Igor could not contend with the numbers of the Horde, and eventually he was overwhelmed. Temujin ordered that he be captured, and just as the Horde was about to make their way out of the city, Temujin received another report that Logan had died on the desert plains, succumbing to the wounds the Horde had inflicted on him. So Temujin decided just to leave his body to unceremoniously rot on the desert plains. When the Khan told the Horde of what had happened, there was a mood of great elation among the soldiers. The feeling was palpable. The Horde had finally accomplished something great this day, eliminating the leader of one of the most established and powerful factions on the continent. Once the Horde returned to Brink, there would be a massive celebration in the city for the Horde's victory. In the prison in the old samurai headquarters, both Lord Yoshinaga and Igor lingered in the cages. Lord Yoshinaga was just waiting to be executed. Igor, on the other hand, the Khan intended to keep alive. He wanted to see if he could turn this brutal killer to his cause, and take the world's most well-known slave hunter and have him hunt nobles and paladins instead. At first, the Khan could not get Igor to do anything but rage and try and smash open the cage bars whenever a Horde member tried to talk to him. Temujin was having no luck with the beast. That was until he approached Jay, a beautiful human woman assigned to the second heavy Arbon, and asked her to speak to the brute. She agreed to this request. However, she was going to use a different tactic than the other members had tried up to this point. When Jay approached Igor, she treated him softly, smiling warmly at the beast, softly brushing his cheek. Igor was taken aback by this, but accepted the kindness. Then Jay pulled out a knife. The brute stiffened, but instead of cutting Igor, she instead made a small incision on her cheek. Igor just stared at the blood rolling down Jay's cheek, completely entranced by the scene.
Will you fight for me, Igor?
She asked in a soft and enticing tone. The beast snapped to attention, staring deeply into Jay's eyes, before nodding slowly.
Excellent,
Jay said, as she smiled and opened the cage. The massive Hiver came rushing out, and Jay half expected him to lunge at her and crush her with his massive fists. Instead, he stopped inches away from her, looked up, and yelled,
"For the Horde! Igor fights for the Horde!"
When Temujin learned of Igor's defection, he could barely contain himself. Nothing will stop us now, thought Temujin. Our domination of the world is all but assured. Temujin now had his very own Legate Lanius to accompany him. The Khan had plans for Igor, sending him back to the Golden City, where he would be issued his new set of Horde armor. Igor would join the Immortals. And not only that, Igor would become Temujin's personal bodyguard. Wherever the Khan went now, Igor would always be in tow, looking for enemies of the Horde to smash. All in all, Temujin actually felt a great sense of kinship with the Southern Hiver, both of them being unusually large and unusually intelligent for Hiver soldier drones. Also, both exiled from their former hives, the two of them would bond very quickly. It wouldn't be long before Igor would get his opportunity to crush enemies of the Horde. Temujin was very excited to show his new toy to his old master. It was time to strike the final blow against the Empire, as the fall of Heng would open the door to Sho Batai, the capital of the Empire. Soon, the Khan would be paying a visit to the Emperor, personally.